The Hedgeless Horseman here. I thought I'd just talk a bit about overall sentiment and what I expect going forward in the miners. Everyone is probably keenly aware that miners overall, including juniors, even more so juniors, their share price performance since around August of 2020 has been, abysmal basically. And like always, sentiment is king. Uh, More so in this sector than most sectors because this is the most volatile and thus sentiment driven sector out there basically. You have these periods where uh, you feel like an idiot. If you felt like an idiot here, you felt like a total idiot here. You felt like a genius up here, you felt smart here. And that's the way the cookie crumbles, so to speak. And that's it's weird when you start to accept that. I mean, the share price of companies and what the actual companies are doing or what they're probably worth. I mean, those two things are often totally dislocated, as we can see in terms of the swings. There's no way that the value of the miners went down 50% during the COVID flash crash, and a lot of miners haven't gone down 30+% in value recently, since August of 2020. But that's how it goes. There are simply more sellers. There's been more sellers, and the lower it goes, it gets more people to sell because, again, like most people are momentum traders. They don't look at the actual companies, what they're doing. They buy a stock because they believe that the price will rise tomorrow, or at least within a week, max a month from now. Even though they say something different, that they are actually long-term value investors, etc., people buy a stock because they want immediate gratification, and that's also one reason, for example, why I think crypto is quite popular. Because it's even more volatile, and there you don't even need to have any real due diligence. Nobody can tell you what the price of what the actual value of Bitcoin is. Everyone just says it's going higher, and that's the main part of the due diligence or the case. It's simply going higher. Okay, and that sector grew into I think like $3 trillion or something, purely based on in my opinion, all of those cryptos are trading sardines that I'm aware of, which should tell you a lot about the current investor psyche, let's say. People want stuff to go up. They don't want to, go through the hassle of actually doing due diligence, because obviously if you do due diligence and the price goes down, etc., you feel like an idiot, or you might, you might be wrong or you might be right, but it still goes down. Like now, for example, there's no way that 95% of the miners have gone down 50% in value in the last year. That's just not the case. A lot of companies have actually increased their value and still they're down 50%. So what the market is valuing these securities at has little to do with what the actual value is. And back here in 2016, I think a lot of companies became overvalued. Mr. Market valued them higher than they were worth. So that's how it is. We go from overvaluation to extreme undervaluation. And I think we're at, just looking at valuations out there, we are indeed at extreme undervaluation. And this is the GDX SPY, basically GDX divided by the S&P 500 ETF. And it's near a level that's been, since 2015 has marked like no-brainer buying opportunity. When it hits this level, it's the miners are typically extremely undervalued, and right now I think that the juniors especially are extremely undervalued, And we can see some similarities. This is the infamous or famous 2015 bottom. After that, some juniors went up like 500% in just 8 months. And that also shows you how quickly things can change, because down here nobody was interested in buying juniors. I mean, uh, since again, people want to buy stuff that they think is going to go up tomorrow or in the next week or month. And this didn't tell many people that it was going to head higher. But valuations were screaming, buy, buy, buy. This has to go higher because they're simply unsustainable, these price levels. And then, of course, all of a sudden, boom, everything started ripping, and it actually became overbought and overvalued. But anyway, like if you look at the RSI here, for example, you have a resistance downtrend, a slight downtrend. But when it hit this level, it started to show bullish divergence, meaning that, okay, this bottom is pretty much as low as this, but RSI climbed higher. And that's the way it went until these lines got extremely tight, and then it broke to the upside. So now we have this similar picture in my view. Lower resistance highs, and we have a bullish divergence in the GDX/SPY ratio. And we're in the same area here. So just based on this bullish divergence, which can, signal that a bottom is in the process of being formed. And here you also see that the shares of the miners actually, well stood pat basically, and same with GDX. It's just been, it's basically been forming some kind of horizontal flattening, and the same in 2015. I of course am not bullish, extremely bullish on especially juniors because of any technical factors. I just look at them and see that they're 70% at least undervalued, a lot of them, or at least 50%, let's say. So I'm nosebleed bullish simply due to price and value are totally dislocated. But of course it's interesting to look at these shorts, let's say. So again, since at least 2014, let's say, anytime it hit this or was close to this level, the GDX SPY ratio, you should sell. I mean, this basically signals frothy conditions, and this level has signaled extreme pessimism and extreme undervaluation. So we're at extreme undervaluation based on this this chart here, and you can just look around the sector. I mean, there's almost nobody buying. There's, I mean, some stocks see no shares traded. Nobody's talking about gold sector at all. Again, 95% of companies are down 95%, and that tells you that this is sentiment and fund of flows or flows of fund driven. It's nothing to do with your favorite junior oftentimes. But if we're gonna see a similar pattern here, it's not a lot of room left before RSI needs to decide where it's going. And obviously, if we're starting here, my bet is to the upside. And again, that's I have to believe that because everything is so extremely undervalued. So the risks by default, in my opinion, are to the upside. That doesn't mean it can't go lower. Of course it can, but that just makes it a more nosebleed buy. I mean, if I wouldn't be selling juniors here, you bet your ass that I'm not selling them here. Up here, yeah, then we can talk again. But if you look, okay, so the time horizon is like these would coincide around, let's say, latter parts of February, and that's just next month. So and if you go back here, for example, we're at January 18 right now, so this is 19. Yeah, okay, that's around this level, and so I mean there are certainly similarities. I mean, in time frame and the way the RSI looks, the way the level the GDX SPY ratio is at. So I mean, if we would do something similar, we could perhaps expect the downtrend in miners to be over, let's say early late Jan, going into February when it really, started to kick off. So let's look at some miners. First of all, this is the GDX ratio. This looks like, I'm not a TA expert, but some crude-looking bull flag. I guess one can argue that this is. And the time frame for breakout would be around, in this period. So who knows? Maybe within a month. So let's look at some juniors. And also, I'd like to point out the fact that Newfound Gold has just kept on drilling, found new zones, etc. In the last 6 months, but prices decline. Okay, so a store that is growing, adding more rigs. Did the Newfound Gold go down, over 50% in value? Of course not. But that's what happens when you have a flow of funds and sentiment-driven market. Even the ones that have been creating more value, they go down, they consolidate. So this looks like it's consolidating for a bull flag, and I wouldn't be surprised then. If history repeats, let's say, and you start to, we put in a bottom around end of January. So okay, yeah, that would be a breakout of the bull flag. So this looks super bullish to me, especially given where we are in terms of sector valuations. And it's been, again, this hasn't tracked the value creation. Cabral Gold, same thing. This looks like a wedge formation to me, consolidation. Very, very frustrating. It's been a year, a downtrend for a year, while the company has found, discovered oxide blankets all over the place. Hit new targets. Done everything they were supposed to do, basically. Drill, and prove that there's a lot more gold. That obviously isn't reflected in the chart, which leads to, again, in my opinion, a widening value to price gap. And so, these kinds of bullish consolidations, while they are frustrating and people feel like idiots, because the most frustrating thing is obviously that you're bullish a company and you expect that your base case is that they will find gold and find more gold, perhaps a lot more gold. And they find a lot more gold, but the price declines. So at the moment, you're not even rewarded for taking on the risks, let's say, and being right, because it didn't matter, because there were more sellers than buyers. But right now, for example, I think, I can't get rid of this, but anyway, almost every retail is already out of the sector by now, which is typical. I think we're for sure running out of sellers. And people feel like idiots down here, so they sell, thus confirming that they are, in my opinion, idiots, because who the hell would sell all these juniors, especially the ones that added value when they got increasingly cheaper. But again, that fits with that time frame. I can see this, break. Let's say it bottoms shortly. Maybe it bottoms today. Who knows? And then break out of this wedge. As always, no guarantees. It's just that this looks like obvious consolidation patterns to me. Look at what happened after it broke out of this one. Newfound Gold just ramped. So now, this looks quite similar to this, and there's no reason for the price to have gone down to this level based on the fundamental trend. Let's say. Some people call Newfound Gold overvalued, and well, I don't. First of all, and I think they are going to grow for a long time still. And certainly the news, except the nugget issue, let's say, which I think is pretty much taken care of. I don't think it affected things that much. So I don't see a reason for this downtrend in the first place. But again, it's not because of what the company has been doing primarily. It's what the markets. People simply want to sell. They're looking to sell and get into a hot sector. They're looking to get into, let's say, tin or excuse me, cryptos, whatever. Okay, new fund goal again. SK Mining, that also consolidated for almost a year. Actually broke out, but now it's back to some form of consolidation again. So I mean, uh, when you think about SK Mining, for example, since the top here, I mean, they identified a bunch of targets. They got, I mean, really good assay results. You know, the 90 meter of 2.6 grams per ton starting from close to surface, etc. So this has also been, I mean, the fundamentals for SK Mining has just grown, 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 and it's one of few that actually has been able to, you know, perform in a neutral way, let's say, and even actually broke out of a consolidation before going back to consolidation, and that's again simply due to everybody and their mother wants to sell down here. You know, the valuation and what the company's been doing is an afterthought. Uh, but as I've shown many people before, even the best success stories like Great Bear Resources, that consolidated for almost 2 years. It had a bunch of 30 to 60% corrections. So even the best stories where the de facto value has been increasing, you still get these. You still get these consolidations and dips, etc. So it's like that's the hardest part. You have to forget what the market is saying. It's stupid. Now everybody, there are simply more sellers than buyers, and they don't care about the valuation because nobody that looks at the valuations in these juniors would come to the conclusion that they're expensive and that's why they should sell. No, they're selling just for the sake of it, let's say, because the prices decline. And of course, for a long-term investor, a strategic thinker, you understand that these prices are way too cheap, and that one thing that is eternal is the fact that sentiment always changes. So you can think, I mean, what I'm thinking when I'm buying down here is how much I'm going to make when sentiment gets up here. And that could go down first. I mean, that's not the issue. I mean, we know that sentiment will get high again. Otherwise, we would have a permanent bear market for forever, which is not going to happen, especially given the supply-demand picture of commodities overall. I mean, they are no-brainer buys, and you see central banks, etc. They're just buying more and more. So everything looks great except the sentiment in the actual, market that trades the securities tied to them. And Elora, another great example. I mean, almost a year. I mean, they've done so much work. They've found Santa Barbara. They found the Santa Barbara extension. Excuse me. They found the Porco Breccia pipe, and recently we found out that they believe there's 3 calderas, so it's actually a caldera complex. I think they're staking more ground. I mean, the uh, the fundamental trend has obviously been up. Obviously, I mean they're set to put out a maiden resource this first half of this year. So 100% value and fundamentals have gone, almost straight up, I would say. Price declined. One of the I mean, again, this is even the best stories are consolidating like this right now. So maybe true value is up around here. Who knows? So I expect when we get in a sentiment high, I expect a lot of these price to value gaps to close. Red Pine, and again, that okay, if we look at the timeline, late January going into February, so that's around this period, if history repeats from the GDX SPY ratio breakout, yes, I could see that we go something like this, let's say, and breaks out of the bull flag. Regardless, I mean, the interesting thing is that if history repeats, we're looking at around a month. Within a month, the GDX SPY ratio should have broken out and hopefully kicked off a mining rally. So I'm expecting because I think the risks are to the upside. I think I expect a lot of these consolidations in the juniors to start breaking within a month to the upside, and that's why I'm nosebleed bullish, or even more bullish, let's say. Red Pine, similar thing. Okay, you have a downsloping trend line, you have higher lows, consolidation, which is going to get resolved, and here you have late January going into late February. So yes, it fits with this pattern in this particular junior, that a breakout either up or down should come within a month. Nevada King, similar story, consolidation, been sold off because of sentiment, but it's starting to make higher lows. So I mean, there are people out there that, as in the case of Red Pine, they're like, okay, this is cheap, the store's gotten better, maybe the price has, maybe the value trend has gone like this, and some people recognize that, so it's starting to, they're starting to buy the companies, and they're willing to pay more and more, but they're still sellers. And Northern Superior, funny thing is, it's like, looks kind of identical to the previous two. So again, I mean, would you say that the fundamental, the value trend of these companies have been exactly the same? No, but they're showing similar, similar patterns, because again, sentiment is king, and nobody's selling these juniors because they're expensive. They're selling because they're for the heck of it, just to sell for whatever irrational reason, and there are buyers stepping up now, and they're willing to pay more and more. And when these last irrational sellers have sold out, there's only going to be buyers left, and the ones that are selling have been selling down here. Of course, they're the ones that typically also buy when sentiment gets red hot again. Dolly Warden, interesting one. That looks like it's already broken out, though it's, I mean, I guess you could call it a very long bull flag. So this is already, broken out basically. And I don't expect it to go back down here. So this is a early runner, I think, and I think that also, I think Dolly Warden is leading the way, that it's simply, ahead of some other juniors, that, this, bull flag type, that these will follow suit. Rookmaster, kind of similar, I guess. I mean, these have been very long downtrends, like a year. And again, I'm just pointing out the fact that so many charts look the same, even though the companies, first of all, majority of them have actually increased in value, and that their like value creation trend or whatever is probably not too similar, and they're very different projects, different stages, but they've all been sold off. So it's like the market has no idea what it's doing. It's just people here are selling for whatever reason they can come up with, because they haven't been making money for a year, so they think that they're in the wrong sector, even though the fact that they're selling down here in many juniors is why they're not going to make money, and they're going to be jumping on the next sector that is already red hot, and then that's going to decline for a year or so, and then they're going to be scratching their head every time, why can't I make any money? That's because you can't buy cheap, you're selling cheap. Timberline Resources, interestingly, I mean, looks a bit similar to a lot of the other ones. Almost the exact same time frame. I mean, downtrend for a year, and that's obviously bullshit, because the value of the company hasn't gone down. But people have been selling every junior across the board because they hate to make money. And it, recently just peaked its head above this, trend line, and then it got slammed down. So, but from a time frame perspective, okay, if history repeats, we're, within a month of this actually breaking out for real. And same with Rookmaster. I mean, that would be starting to break out in this time period. I guess what I'm trying to say overall is that I think we're nearing the end of a year-long consolidation in a lot of juniors that have no business trading at their levels, and at the next sentiment high, which 100% will come, I think a lot of them will surpass their previous peaks, and I expect to be up a couple of 100% overall in the next 12 to 24 months. Magna Gold, it's also, I mean, quite erratic actually, but obviously like a downtrend for over a year actually. And depending on how you draw the lines, I mean, it's had some, let's say, false breakdowns, false breakout, a bit similar to Timberline. But this trend, unless the company goes bankrupt, this trend will break one day. And if history repeats, we're within, let's say, a month or so from all these juniors led by the major miners, let's say, breaking out. So I personally think, I mean, the reason why I did this video was to, I guess, bring some hope, let's say, that yes, many of us feel like idiots right now, because even if we've been right on the, let's say, even if our positive risk reward on certain cases or many cases have proven to have a favorable result, because you're bullish, I'm bullish at junior, not because I know that they will have positive news or that it will turn into a success. I simply think that I'm paying too little of a price for the upside potential, let's say, the risk reward. But a lot of these juniors have actually, Nevada King recently drilled a fantastic hole. Red Pine discovered a bunch of zones, adding 2 rigs. Eloro, I mean, that's one of the fastest grower in the sector. SK Mining, their SK Creek project just grown and grown in potential. Newfound Gold, hitting new lenses, hitting new zones. Cabral Gold, discovered oxide blankets starting at surface, obviously, across in multiple areas. Northern Superior, they think they know that the orientation of the drilling at TK or TP or whatever one of their 3 projects was orientated in the wrong way, so possibly a positive development there, and they have 3 good-looking projects overall. So that's just cheap, and we have yet to find out really how the value trend will be there. Dolly Warden consolidated the district around it. I think, it brings value to the company, so that's the one that's actually looks broken out. Rookmaster Resources done a updated mineral resource. Had a lot of drill success. I think again it's the financing overhang and threat of, let's say, the option overhang of acquiring the projects that's been a wet blanket, and that might be in place for some time, but it's super duper cheap. Magna Gold, they're quite new story, ramping up production, so that's left to see. It looks super cheap right now. I think the market cap's around 70 million, and they got an operating gold mine and a bunch of projects, so I think that's just cheap, and who knows, maybe this will look super cheap in the future. Again, to recap, I'm just, my advice, let's say, and I'm not talking company specific advice, hold out. We're down here right now. We're down here. So the vast majority, the brunt of the pain, let's say, that's behind us, simply because the valuations are getting extremely silly right now, and I think 90% of people that are weak hands, let's say, they're already out. So I think we're running out of sellers. And that's, I think, why you're seeing these starting to see in some companies, higher lows, higher lows. And some will be leading. I mean, some are more attracted to some type, a different type of person or investor, let's say. But overall, I mean, these stories have all come down like 50% plus, and most of them have created value. So even though yes, it's inevitable that you feel like an idiot when every idiot and increasingly more idiotic sell cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, so you look more and more wrong. Mr. Market says, "Oh, you've been wrong because the value of the company is going down," but in fact, Mr. Market is just a blithering idiot basically. And Mr. Market is the marginal buyer seller. And if you think that the marginal seller at these levels in juniors is someone who beats the market, then I have a bridge to sell you. No, it's just Mr. Market is getting more and more and more stupid, and and then you can go from extremely stupid to like stupid on the other way, basically, that it actually becomes too greedy. Now they're way too, Mr. Market is way too fearful. It's pricing in, it doesn't care about valuation. People are selling because they're afraid that the trend will continue forever. So at every bottom, it always looks like it's bottomless, obviously. I mean, that's just how it goes. I mean, did the short look good here? Just, cascade selling basically, and then a small bounce, looks like a dead cat bounce, and then bam. No, of course. I mean, how many people would buy here based on the short, let's say? It's been in a long downtrend. It looks like the selling is actually escalating. And how about this one? I mean, a multi-year downtrend, cascade, some bounces, and then it creates, a multi-month support zone, and then that gets broken through. I mean, the chart obviously looks horrible down here. So nobody except a value investor is going to be buying. The value investor will say that, wow, this is the best risk reward opportunity I've seen in the last 5 years. So of course I'm buying. And then they would have been rewarded. So I mean, when nobody is buying based on charts, sentiment says sell you idiot. Anyone who just had the price value gap in mind would just get increasingly bullish and would be max bullish here, would be 52-week bullish here, would be, 4-year bullish down here. But that's like 1% of investors perhaps are able to think like that to consider the fact that price has gone down, value has gone up, so the lower newfound gold goes without something bad happens, the better the opportunity. Obviously, in hindsight, this was the best opportunity to buy. Why? Because price was lowest. I mean, in this time frame at least. And the same goes for Great Bear. I mean, it had big crashes. Anyone who bought when the short looked horrible, they would have, come out like a bandit, basically. So, yeah, I mean, if you think about the signal, which is the value and value trend, you just get, if you have that in mind, that you're actually buying value, you're buying something real, and price is just what you're paying for it. You will start to get increasingly bullish the lower something goes. And I mean, I bought a few shares today. I mean, I bought Black Wolf Gold and Copper a bit. I mean, that just looks ridiculously cheap. I bought some Rockmaster. Also, I mean, Jesus, it's so cheap. I can't help myself. It's like at this point, of course, you're going to be affected about the downtrend, and you're going to start thinking that the market knows something, etc. But that's what everyone feels at every bottom. Here, people here start probably talking about gold is dead, mining is dead. Same thing here, same thing. So Forget about the trend, forget what people say, because most people, vast majority of people, especially in this sector, does not beat an index. I mean, I think this is the hardest sector to beat, almost, because it's so sentiment driven, and people don't have the stomach to be buying low. So just before you buy, just look at what you're actually buying, and that should be enough to realize that, okay, the price I'm paying right now is probably ridiculously low for, take Rookmaster, 2.5 million ounces high grade BC. Excuse me, I don't know what the price is, but like 30 million. How on earth is that expensive? The sunk costs are higher than that. If nobody in their right mind would go out looking for a Rebel Ridge type deposit if someone told them that, well, you have to spend years of work, you have to be extremely lucky first of all, then you have to spend a lot of money and have continued to sex, and if success, and if you manage to do all that, if you are lucky enough to have, you know, one of 1,000 prospects to actually have a 2.5 million ounce high grade deposit in a tier 1 jurisdiction, and you spend, you know, tens of millions, etc., it's going to be valued. Mr. Market is saying that it's worth like 30 million, excluding the option though. But even if we said like 60 million, there's no way that anybody would be dumb enough to go out and try to find a system like that. If Mr. Market is right about the minor valuation in juniors right now, we wouldn't have a mining sector. That's simply the fact. There's no way. There's no way that the valuations are correct, because nobody, knowing that, if that was true, would be dumb enough to go out and actually try to find any gold or silver. Yeah, a long rant. Thanks for listening. Note that a bunch of these companies are banner sponsors, not all, but do your own due diligence and make up your own mind. Happy hunting.